Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Intasso webinar. I'll give everyone just a few more seconds to stream in. I can see people arriving, which is looking good. Great to see you all yet again. Fantastic. Yeah, I can see green lights all from my side. So I think without further ado, we've only got 30 minutes and some amazing speakers with me today that I know we need really more than 30 minutes to talk, right? So let me just quickly just check that. Perfect. Yeah. So let me welcome you all to Platform Engineering for Execs, Team Topologies, Tools, and Trade-offs. I am super excited today to summarize the. So here's a high level TLDR. Execs are being told very much to do more with less. App dev teams still need to go faster, decrease risk, and scale effectively. Platforms can provide high leverage, but the key and the focus of our talk today is you need good leadership to make this work. People, tooling, trade-offs are the keys to success. And now, who better than two amazing speakers to join me that have lived this, breathed it, had many successes, learned some lessons along the way as well. First off, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. If you don't know who Sarah Wells is, where have you been? But Sarah is an independent consultant specializing in microservices, cloud native apps, developing technology strategy, and migrating from legacy systems. Sarah spent over a decade at the Financial Times. That's how I first got to know her, leading as this company transformed into a true cloud native organization, ultimately releasing 250 times as often and embracing autonomous empowered teams, which I thought was a fantastic line there, Sarah. You are, of course, the author of this amazing book. I was privileged to review it as it was being created, enabling microservice success. So please do check that book out, everyone. And I asked Sarah what was her most proud moment sort of in the technology space. And of course, Sarah, you said it's being on the Kubernetes homepage, right? I had to include that. Like, Sarah is world famous. If you go to the Kubernetes homepage, scroll down a little bit, you will find her there. But thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. Like, always enjoyed my chats with you.
Thank you
I'll
for
also
inviting me.
I'll also introduce Paula Kennedy, co-founder and chief operating officer at Syntasso, and my boss too. Paula's previous roles include senior director of Tanzu Global Education at VMware, and also senior director of platform services EMEA at Pivotal, and co-founder and chief operating officer at Cloud Credo. That's how we first met, I think, Paula, back in the day, wasn't it? Now, Paula's experience runs deep. If you're in the London tech scene, you definitely bumped into Paula. She's got real expertise in platforms and leadership, and also helps to run a bunch of conferences like FastFlowCon, KCD UK, and Platt Eng Day at the upcoming KubeCon North America as well. So, Paula, thank you so much for joining myself and Sarah today.
Thanks, Daniel.
Let's press on. So I want to set the scene a little bit, just a couple of intro slides. I'm sure folks are kind of almost getting, fed up of seeing this, but it is an important kind of level set. The Gartner folks are saying that 80% of large software engineering orgs are going to be establishing platform teams by a couple of years' time. Very much, if you're looking at the hype cycles that are coming up in Gartner, it's very much a thing. Platform engineering spread across all the different hype cycles. Now, we've talked in previous webinars with Abby and Kat and Sevi and various folks around treating your platforms as a product and the value this brings, delivering value through customer focus, treating the platform as a internal product. And the ThoughtWorks folks have got an amazing article I've linked there if you want to know more about this strategy as well. But I think related to treating the platforms as products, how do we lead this transformation? And the kind of setup for this is the Gartner hype cycle you can see on the right there. Platform engineering is a sort of cresting the wave and going down into the trough of disillusionment. And we're starting to see this a little bit on the interwebs, right? I've looked at Reddit, a few folks saying we built platforms and people aren't using them. Am I a bad platform engineer? And we've actually got Mark O'Neill from Gartner quoting Paula at KubeCon at EU earlier in the year, saying, the build it and they will come mentality. He's seeing this too. There's going to be some challenges up and coming. So super excited to chat to Paula and Sarah. You've been in these leadership positions, building platforms for a number of years. Over the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to dive into 5 questions, hopefully, and we'll perhaps look at the audience Q&A as well. And we're going to cover some of the leadership challenges associated with building and operating platforms. So we'll gather around the fire for the fireside chat, right? I've got my chat GPT generated fireside with some laptops in there as well. But I want to, Sarah, I'll look in your direction first. And when and how to start building a platform and the team and team and leadership within an organization. What's the cues, do you think, for being intentional about building a platform?
I think when you're small, you've got a couple of teams, you just do everything. And then eventually you start to have lots of teams, and then all those teams are starting to have to solve some of the same problems, particularly if they've chosen different technologies. If you have a lot of autonomy in the team, they might be doing deployments to different stacks, and then suddenly you have every team's got someone who's basically doing platform, and they're solving the same problems. And when they solve them for that team. So I'd say one example would be, you decide you want to, and this is a while ago, you decide you want to stop people from being able to commit keys into your source control. So you build something that scans before it goes in, but you do it for your team. And it doesn't work for the other team, and it's not solving the problem for the organization as a whole. So I think you have to start looking at, where are people spending time? How much time are they spending on this sort of underlying work? And start thinking, well, if we had a team that was dedicated to doing that for everybody, it would speed everyone else up, and it would help us with standardization as well. Because as one of the things that, as the tension you have about autonomy and empowered teams is, it's great, but then you end up with 8 ways to do a thing, and then you have to keep all 8 of those ways to do it secure. And you have to manage the cost. And as an engineering leader, you kind of go, well, actually, I'd rather there was only one way to do this, because then I would know it was okay.
Totally here. Paula, you got any thoughts on that one too?
Yeah, I mean, I echo kind of what Sarah said. I think what's interesting is, and I heard you say this, Daniel, is that everybody's got a platform, whether they know it or not. So it absolutely depends on that size of organization. But if you're shipping software to end users, somehow there's a platform that some things are running somewhere. I think the challenge within any organization, big or small, is to understand how much you curate that platform.
Mm-hmm.
It exists. You're either buying it or you're building it, or some combination of the two, but the platform is out there. I think for the question of, when to start building your platform, I like the proverb about, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago and the second best time is now. I think there's a great talk from our CEO, Colin, that he published recently. It was published in the New Stack this week, where he talked about like 20 years of platform engineering. Right. So I think platform engineering itself is not new. Platforms are not new. But I think actually right now is a good time to be starting to look at it, if you haven't already, only because there's a lot of community shared knowledge out there. Right. You mentioned the hype cycle from Gartner. It is hypey. And sometimes, you have to cut through a bit of noise, but actually there are some really good people putting content out there. There are people sharing their experiences. There are lots of lessons learned painfully by many of us, but those things will help others avoid mistakes. So I think if you haven't already looked at your internal platform, but if you have got the problems that Sarah's talking about, where people are multiple teams solving the same problems over and over, and there's waste and duplication, etc., a very good time to start building or looking at it is now.
Because the tools start to be there. So doing things at the FT, there's a lot of times where I say, well, we built this, but now you don't have to. We built a system catalog, but now you don't have to, because you can find it. People have started to provide all of those things that help you to build an effective platform.
Love it.
Absolutely.
One thing we said off mic the other day, Sarah, you said like platforms are like brands. You always have a brand, whether you know it or not. And I find that was a great quote, made me think. But how do you encourage leadership teams to recognise, to Paula's point, they've got a platform and invest in it? Have you got any advice on trying to make the platform visible?
It is really difficult, because there's always a tendency for engineering teams to see this as, work not delivering features. So you have to be able to explain why this is speeding up other teams. You have to be able to track, well, they're getting more work done as a result of this, or recognizing what your leadership cares about. Like, this makes us more secure. It makes us much less likely to have some problem that's going to cost us a lot of money and might damage our reputation. And I think that recognizing that, and recognizing that you can also like show how people are actually enjoying using your platform. Because Paula's point about there's been a platform for, or Colin's point for, there's been a platform for 20 years. There's always been some kind of platform, but there was a point where it was built by people who possibly asked you to open a ticket in a ticketing system, and then they'll get back to it a week later, and that there was a lot of tension and like frustration. So now you can say, look, actually it's a much better relationship. We're talking to people, we're building things they actually want.
Love it.
Just to add on to that, there's a friend of mine, Lena Mooner, who talks about platform teams tend to be invisible until something goes wrong. Which I think is a great point as well. So your point about, how do we get leadership to recognize the importance? It is sometimes that thing where if the internal platform is down or there's something wrong with it, everyone notices. But if everything's going great and code is shipping, no one notices. It's a bit invisible. So I absolutely agree with Sarah's point around like trying to find something to tie that platform success to make it visible, to sort of sing out about how great certain parts are that people wouldn't notice unless you make a bit of noise about it.
Yeah. Also, if you're starting to think of platform as a product, you just have to think of it as something that you're marketing. And I was tech director in charge of the platform teams at the FT, and I used to see it as my job to go and talk about, hey, we've built this thing, it's really cool. I used to drop by and see my CIO and demo some of the stuff my team had built, because she said no one ever dropped by her office with good news. so I would go there occasionally and say, hey, look, there's this cool thing that we've done for like 5 minutes. But it's just basically showing that it is that brand thing. It is that thing where everyone goes, oh, I don't want to be like doing loads of marketing and brand stuff. But actually, if you go and sell what your team is doing, they have more space to do more of it.
100%. Now, I think that leads perfectly onto my next question, was how to measure the progress and impact of platform engineering. Like, Paula, shall I look your way first on this one? As
Sure.
in, there's many metrics. I think you're leading and lagging. I'd just love to get your general thoughts on what to talk to, like Sarah mentioned, like to other leadership, to senior folks as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. So measuring things is hard. I'll start with that.
Yep.
But it's important, because how do you know if things are getting better or worse, right? That's the basic principle for measurement. I listened to a great podcast last week, the Engineering Enablement podcast. And I listened to an episode, it was probably from a few weeks ago, but it was comparing, so it had Abby and Laura from DX comparing Dora, Space, and the DevX framework. So 3 different frameworks for measuring developer productivity. And it was great. They compared them. They talked about them. I'd recommend a listen. My key takeaway from that was around, you have to choose the metrics that are right for your organization. There's so many things you can measure, but it's crucial to pick the right thing that is important for your business and be aware of the consequences of measuring that thing. Because if we talk about how people get incentivized and how people get motivated and those kind of things, sometimes metrics can lead to obscure behavior that you don't want to have happen. But if you're able to measure, so let's take developer happiness, right? I've seen people measure that with their platform. People who are using the platform, what's the NPS score that they'll give with regards to that platform? I've seen folks measure time from idea to production, right? What is the speed that I can deploy a feature to an end customer? Can we shorten that cycle? There's not a one size fits all, and there's not a you must measure this thing and then everything will be perfect. It's context specific, and it takes a bit of thinking about.
Love it. Sarah, any thoughts on that too?
Yeah, I could not agree more on it. Depends on your context. So take, for example, the Dora metrics. If your organization is doing badly in how long it takes you to go from code commit to live, or the failure rate of when you make releases. So if you're someone that is taking a week or a month to get code out, or you have half of your releases result in you having to patch or roll back, then you have something that's very obvious to target, because you can see that improving. And that can be really great. And I really like the Dora metrics. But if you are in an organization that actually all of the teams are doing pretty well at the Dora metrics, which was the case in the FT, you're not going to measure those getting much better through moving to a more platform as a product view. What you are going to do is, you've got a team of, say, 5 developers who are able to release in half an hour and they have a change failure rate of 10%. But of those 5 developers, 2 of them are doing platform work in every team. So there just aren't as many new features going out, and people are frustrated because they're having to spend a lot of their time doing that. So you have to start measuring how much work people can do, which is always difficult.
Mhm.
But then it starts to become, well, can you do surveys? Can you look at people's feedback of, actually, we feel like we're spending less of our time doing things that are not not important for our purpose. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing to start looking at. How much time are you spending solving business problems?
Yeah, great stuff, Sarah. I'll definitely plus one Paula's recommendation of that podcast and the DX folks as well, and it touches on surveys and everything as well, Sarah. It's really nice. I mean, I've known Laura like for many years, super smart in the Docker space, and Abby's like just doing some amazing work. So that is a podcast to listen to. I think I actually mentioned it in the Syntasso newsletter. So sign up for the Syntasso newsletter. You will get previews of these things as they come out, right? Because I listened to it on the train one day and thought this is an amazing podcast, but very much building on the things that you both mentioned there. And let's press on to the next question now. Why and what to communicate about platform usage across the org? I think, Sarah, you've kind of queued this one up with the earlier conversation as well, but I'd love to get your thoughts on getting buy-in for the platform and tooling work versus feature delivery.
So I'm going to go on a slight tangent answering this, I think, which is, I think it's really important to have platforms not be mandatory, because you can have 100% usage if people are forced to do it this way. It doesn't mean anyone's happy, and it doesn't mean you're solving the problems in the right way. So having that ability for teams to say, you know what, I'm going to go and build my own way of doing my own build pipeline. It usually means whatever you've built is just not meeting the needs. And having that idea that no one is forced to use your platform means you have to think of it as a product and actually build something, talk to your customers, work out what they want, solve their problems. And then you start to be able to meaningfully say, okay, people have migrated away from their own solutions or whatever existed before, and they've started moving onto what we're producing.
Yeah, I love it. That mandatory platform or not is, I think, something a lot of leadership wrestle with, right? Because they want to show the usage of the platform. Like, I've spent all this money, like people are using it.
Yeah.
But I hear you, Sarah, in my days of building platforms, like the mandatory adoption, like I don't know, it wasn't, as a consultant, it wasn't very successful, if I'm being honest.
So you don't want it to be a free for all. You know, people can go away from the mandatory stuff, but I always think it's like, yes, you can build your own version of this, but you have to be supporting it at 3 a.m. You have to make sure that it's got security scanning. You have to make sure it ships logs to our log aggregation. You know, you have a set of requirements. It should actually be more difficult for people to have to go off road.
Yeah, I like it. It talks a lot about the Netflix freedom and responsibility
Yeah.
mode. I know it's a cliche to quote Netflix, and we're not all Netflix, but I do like a lot of those principles, and I've learned a lot from the Netflix folks and yourself, Sarah, like the QCon conferences and so forth. Paula, any thoughts on those as well?
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned at the start of this was execs, leadership, organizations are being asked to do more with less, right? So one thing I think about, or we talk about in Syntasso, is this multiplayer mode. You can do more with less if the platform that you have internally has contributions from those different teams. So Sarah talked already about kind of duplication, people solving their own problems per team. With the platform, you've got a team of platform builders, platform engineers who are focused on that, but that doesn't mean that that team knows everything about everything. So you've got domain expertise, you've got specialist knowledge in your sort of other teams. One way to get buy-in to the platform is a little bit like that IKEA effect, right? That we talk about, where if a team has contributed a component into the platform, they feel a bit of ownership. Right? They feel a bit of responsibility that the thing they've contributed for other teams to use is working, is fit for purpose. And so you can use this inner sourcing model as a way of getting buy-in for the platform. People own parts of it. You could also look at gamification. I've seen some of that, where you sort of like people contribute things, or you can put out scorecards of which teams using the platform the most. Like, there's ways to try to, I absolutely 100% agree with the point of it should be optional. Mandatory just means people look for workarounds. But
yeah, totally.
I think if you can do that inner sourcing, get people to buy in because they're contributing, because it's their platform, it's everybody's platform, it's not someone else's platform. It's a way of getting buy-in.
I want to just build on that and talk about something we did when I was at the FT, which was we had people come on 3 months secondments from engineering teams into the platform team.
Nice.
And that had a couple of really nice consequences. So they come and spend 3 months with us, which was long enough to build something. They would bring their problems, they'd bring the things that they were bothered about. So we would, when we were organising the secondments, we would try and make sure that whatever they were building was something that their team cared about. Couldn't always work, but generally. And then they were our best advocates. They went back to the teams, they understood everything that the platform included, and it built those relationships into the team. And the first year, every single person who'd come on secondment came to our Christmas lunch, and I thought, yeah, we've built
Nice.
these really good, and not just because it was free, but you know, it was that real nice feeling that these are now our allies in all of the teams. But we've also been listening to what they've been telling us about.
I love that
Nice.
suggestion. That is amazing. Yeah, plus one to that. That is building on both what you're saying, getting buy-in with folks, right? Empathizing is a key thing with platforms, right? We do see this a lot. I'll move on to the next topic now. We mentioned Team Topologies in the title, so I did want to cover it. We're friends, fans of Matthew and Manuel's work. All of us, I think, here know them well from various conferences. What do you think about the Team Topologies uptake? I'm seeing a little bit of sort of pushback. I'm chatting to Manuel a couple of weeks ago. He was saying the same thing on LinkedIn. A few folks are like questioning some things, which I think is a healthy part of the adoption curve of any practice, any technology, anything in general. But I know, Sarah, chatting to you off mic, we were talking about dual purpose platform and enablement teams. Are you seeing more of that now?
So I think this is always, so I love Team Topologies, that the idea that, and these are patterns, which means that actually it's quite hard for people to necessarily go, it will tell me exactly how to do something. It gives you a way to look at what you have and work out where there might be something that is unnecessarily complicated. So I love the idea that teams have particular ways of working. So you've got, most of your teams are aligned to a stream of business value, but you have other teams that are there to reduce the cognitive load. There is a distinction in Team Topologies between teams that are building a platform and teams that are enabling teams who have expertise and go and teach people and facilitate. What I've seen and when I was looking at my teams in the platform organization was actually there were teams that did both. They would be maybe focused on one or on the other. Maybe they build a platform to do something and then they go and they teach people about that and they bring those people up to speed on the technologies behind it. So I think it's more that the mode switches a bit. And in a lot of organizations, you might have a security engineering team who are largely enabling other teams. But sometimes they build tooling that is going to be used so that everyone can see how they're doing in dealing with security issues. And maybe you have a cloud enablement team that are largely building a platform, but they also go out and teach people about the AWS stuff that teams may not have yet worked out how to do.
Yeah, I love it. And Paula, you're actually a Team Topologies advocate as well, right? So, I mean, your words carry extra weight here, right? What do you think? Put you on the spot.
I mean, I'm definitely biased.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan, as you mentioned, and a Team Topologies advocate. I think for this question specifically, I think it relates a little bit back to what Sarah was talking about earlier around your size of organization. So the Team Topologies book is fantastic at, as Sarah mentioned, it's a framework. It gives you a pattern. It's a way of looking at your organization and understanding the topology, right? How do teams interact? How should they interact? Who's doing what? With the ultimate goal of, getting flow of value across the business as fast as possible, delivering to your users as fast as possible. But it's context specific. So the question of kind of who does what, if you've a very big company, you've probably got more than one platform team, as an example. I know at the last, you mentioned Fast Flow conference. At the last Fast Flow conference we ran last year, the first one, Matthew Skelton stood on stage. He was asked the question, what have you learned since writing the book? What have you learned? And one of the points he made was, typically, there's not just one platform team. When you get to a certain size of organization, it's sort of platform groupings, I think is the new word he was sort of framing, which is around the multiple platform teams. And I think the same is true maybe for enablement teams. Maybe obviously there's multiple stream-aligned teams, those product teams typically. But again, the idea of the book is not to be, here is your blueprint, you must look like this and everything will be great.
Yeah.
It's about trying to define the boundaries, the interaction modes, as Sarah mentioned, how teams come together, work together, the contract between those teams. And yeah, sometimes you'll have a platform team that's doing enablement. Sometimes you'll have a complicated subsystem team that's doing enablement. It's fluidity. It's not supposed to be a rigid set of instructions. The book is designed to enable you to think about patterns and interaction modes.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm sensing that kind of vibe that we've seen with Agile. So I mean, everyone sort of adopts that framework and like, I must rigidly enforce Agile, which is by its very nature not correct, right? If you're trying to be Agile, you can't sort of like have that rigid structure. So I'm wondering if, like exactly what you both said, as Team Topologies evolves, we'll see new patterns emerge. I'm super keen to see the second edition of the book, perhaps. I'm sure Matthew and Mama might be working on that one, right?
Well, I will do a shameless plug for Fast Flow Conference that's
Go for it,
taking
Paula.
place again this
Yeah.
year. So I mentioned we ran the event for the first time last year. It was an experiment and sold out.
Awesome.
It was great. I mean, I'm obviously biased because I helped,
Yeah.
helped put it together, but it was great. The audience kind of attendee feedback was really positive. So we're running it again. It's the 10th of September in London. Tickets are available now. The lineup looks amazing. This year we've got Matthew and Manuel presenting, plus a heap of other fantastic practitioners sharing use cases, etc. So if Team Topologies is your vibe, I definitely recommend checking the conference out.
Love it. Love it. Final question, and we'll keep this one fairly short, and then I'll try and do a little wrap up. There's so many great things. I've tried to make some notes as we're going along here. But I did mention tooling in the title, right? How important is platform tooling? And we all know that people stuff is the hard stuff, right? We've talked about that off mic. But I do want to mention the CNCF landscape. We're doing a lot of work with CNCF, good folks there, like trying to bring these patterns together, these tools, these technologies together. Sarah, I'd love to get your sort of thoughts, and I appreciate this is like a 90-second take or whatever, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the importance of tooling.
So Sam Newman wrote a blog post last year, I think, about like, don't call it a platform team.
Yeah.
Because if you call something a platform team, they think their job is to build a platform, and their job isn't to build a platform. It's to speed up all the other teams. And Team Topologies talks about a minimum, basically the thinnest viable platform. So what can you get away with? Is it just a list that says here are the AWS tools that we use, and here's how to use them? I don't think tooling is not the core thing to be considering. I think the important thing is don't build something if you can buy it, and generally I like to choose tools that people are already using, and when you need them. So I think any platform team that says, right, the first thing we're going to do is going to set up a Kubernetes cluster, it's like you have to work out if that's actually what is needed. So the FT made, and this is a long time ago, but made a lot of progress deploying services for the website to Heroku. So if you can lean on something that isn't as complicated, then that's great. We also had Kubernetes for more backend stuff, so we had a variety of things, and it's just basically you don't have to like cram everybody into one approach or build a really complicated thing. I think the problem is it's fun, it's interesting, and if you're really into that area, you want to go off and build a thing. But it's realizing sometimes that it's not what you want to do, it's what your customers actually need. And there's a great quote, I think it's from Kathy Korovich, who says, you're a chef cooking for other chefs, but that doesn't mean they want to eat steak. Basically, they may have different tastes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Paula, probably a 60-second take if that's okay.
Sure. Obviously, I'm biased because I am a vendor of a tool in the platform engineering space. But I agree with everything that Sarah just said. I think tooling, we know, can't fix your people org problems. But I think for me, the key thing when looking at any tooling, exactly what Sarah said, don't build if you can buy. Like you can lean on the shoulders of giants, other people with expertise. If you can bring in a tool that's useful, buy it, then build just enough. The thinnest viable platform, absolutely 100% agree. Build just enough. The thing we talk about in Syntasso is having the lower cost of change as possible. So avoiding lock-in, whatever that means for you, whether it's vendor lock-in. Vendor lock-in is not necessarily bad if it's the right solution for you, but avoiding locking yourself into choices that you are stuck with and you can't be flexible. Gregor Hopp talks about the floating platform. That's the thing where you always want to be able to make the most of the new technology. We haven't even mentioned AI. AI is the classic thing. It's new. People want to bring it in. They want to bring it in. So you need to have an internal tooling set that is flexible enough that you can keep up to date with technology. Don't be forced into a corner with it.
Lovely. I'll have to hold you. I'm sure all of us here, we could talk for days, right? And we will at conferences. So people come along and find us at conferences, and we'll continue this conversation. But I did just want to do a wrap up. So some notes I took. Everyone has a platform. Understand what leadership cares about when you're measuring things. Platform as a product and thinking about your customers and empathizing. Sarah, you mentioned, very, very important. That DX podcast, I'll link as well that you mentioned, Paula, because I love that. Choosing metrics for your org. Secondments, Sarah. I saw a lot of interactions on the emojis. People were loving that idea of secondments, of getting that buy-in across the org. So fantastic work. And then you both mentioned things like the thinnest viable platform, which is very much Team Topologies that are popularized. And I encourage folks to do check out the book and other content from those folks as well. So thank you both so much in this 30-minute whirlwind tour. There's been so much knowledge. I'll make sure we write some summaries and cut this up and share it around as well. I want to say your book, Sarah, is amazing. I was privileged to be on the sidelines watching it as it was being written. I know several other awesome people, Anna Shipman and Sahel was involved, loads of folks, right? But obviously your book, but we were on the sidelines giving you commentary, giving some suggestions and feedback. It is an amazing book. So if you're building microservices, you want to follow in Sarah's footsteps, do check it out. It's available on the O'Reilly platform and all good bookshops as well. And we have got a couple of links here, which I'll share in a slide deck later on. If you want to go into things that Paula mentioned around Cratix that we offer and some other techniques and tools and just sharing best practice, you can find the links on the QR code there. At that point, I think we're bang on 30 minutes. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today. Thank you so much, Paula, for making time at your busy schedule as well. Really appreciate the knowledge being dropped. The conversation was amazing, as expected. I look forward to continuing the chat later on.
Great. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Daniel.
Thanks, Paula.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye. Okay, goodbye.